Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to this week's episode of Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell and I'm joined by my co-host, not Mark Davison this week. No, we've got a special guest for this week's episode, and that would be behind the steel curtains, co-editor, Jeff Hartman. Welcome to Steelers Touch Down Under.
Hey, what's up, man? I'm really excited for this. We've been planning this for a couple weeks now. You knew that Mark was going to be gone, and so you said, "Does someone want to join you?" I was like, you know what? I don't know if you know this, but someone actually asked me a question on my Let's Ride podcast in a mailbag question saying, "What are the odds that we could get you and the Aussies together?" And I was like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And here we are. I'm excited to get your take on some Steelers because honestly, I think the most that I've talked to you about anything in particular was about my favorite TV show, which is Yellowstone, and not the Steelers. I feel like this is fresh. So we're going to break new ground here. I'm excited.
That's it. And look, for everyone out there as well, it's pretty special for Jeff to be joining us. Actually, his birthday today. I'll be respectful of age, but happy birthday to Jeff. And I'm sure when the regulars are jumping in this live chat, everyone just wishes you happy birthday. Thank you for everything you do for us as part of that BTSC family. But yeah, I hope you've had a good day of celebrations.
Thank you. At 38 years old, or years young, however you want to put it. My kids asked me today, "Oh, how does it feel to be 38?" And I said, the same as it did to be 37. So it's about the same. I can't complain. Life is good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming up to the 30th birthday, and I'm starting to realize what an old man I am when I'm seeing people out doing the TikToks out and stuff, and I'm like, what is that? I'm starting to feel old now. I feel like I've hit that thing.
So social media passes you up so quick. That's the biggest thing, because when I was, I really date myself, and I'm sure that's worse for everyone else. But when I was in college and I was graduating, Facebook was just going around to all the colleges. It started in the Ivy Leagues, and then it moved to the major universities in our country. And I didn't even know what Facebook was when I graduated. And then Twitter, it was funny because some of my students and my former players when I coached, I had a bigger Twitter following than they did because of the work I did for behind the steel curtain. And so they would get really frustrated and mad. How do you have so many Twitter followers? You just don't do it as well as I do, I guess. But now with TikTok and stuff and Instagram, and I found out from my students this week in school, there's some other platforms I didn't even heard of. So yeah, it passes you up quick. It really, really quick.
Yeah, this is the one for me. So we'll just say there's about that 8-year difference there. And, I remember jumping on MySpace. That was the first one. But yeah, TikTok's the one that I just went, I'm not doing that. I'm just that's going to start to pass me by. So, and then crazy. It's actually, and it does relate to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Jeff, you know about this week, but for all the listeners out there and for those tuning in live now, we actually in Australia have had Facebook ban news media and sharing news media in our country due to the government's doing some work to sort of make Facebook pay for the news that they share and sort of recuperate some of those journalism jobs. And, right now, Mark and I over here and any international fans in Australia, we actually can't even view the Pittsburgh Steelers page in Facebook right now because of the media that they share. We can't view. So it's great to be able to join you guys live now through StreamYard on Facebook, but we actually can't even see the Facebook page for BTSC right now. So it's crazy times down here. But look, yeah, let's crack into some Steelers. So interesting week. I'd love to say massive week for the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's something that Mark and I like to talk about, but you know what? It's been rather quiet. Obviously, we came out of last weekend with Pouncey's retirement news. We've had J.J. Watt sort of be released by the Texans, and then there's all that fuel on the fire. Will he be a Pittsburgh Steel? Will he not? Will it be, maximum wattage down in Pittsburgh? You had Kevin Colbert's interview as well. We still don't know where it's sitting with Big Ben. So for us, the theme of this week's show is going to be really centered around it has been a quiet week for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this offseason. There has been a little bit of news, but it has been quiet. And is it really this calm before the storm? Is it this calm before, we've got these 20 free agents? What are we doing with them? What's the salary cap number? Who's going to be there? Who's not? I guess, Jeff, you've obviously had a lot of shows this week. What's the piece that stood out for you that you You sort of sat back there as a fan and just went outside of that role as the co-editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com and our podcast family in the YouTube shows. What sort of sat there as a fan? You went, wow, that's still the most burning question for me.
And to me, the most poignant news, which really was the only news this week, was Kevin Colbert's comments, but specifically about Ben Roethlisberger. It just was one of those situations where I read what he said and I listened to some interviews, and you're seeing on Twitter when he was speaking with the media, people like Mark Cabali and Jerry Dulac and Ed Bouchette, they're all tweeting about what's going on. And the comments were, I don't know, if you compare them to last year, okay? Last season, he was actually at the scouting conference, or was getting ready to go, because that hadn't been canceled at the time. And he was talking about how Ben Roethlisberger could be better this year than he was before his injury because he had a year off. He was able to study the game. His elbow looks great. And boy, the change in a year. And it's not that I don't think that Ben Roethlisberger can play anymore, but they realize the salary cap hit is big. And I just was shocked that that's the approach he took. Brian Anthony Davis on the Steelers preview said he was playing bad cop. I'm not sure if I'm going to go that far, but to me, that was what a little alarm went off in my head and said, wow, like that, those comments were they were a little off for me. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Yeah, the question sits there for me. It's like, what's the cost of bringing back Big Ben? And I followed that conversation that you guys had there, in the preview, and it's, can Canada run his offense? We can't afford Ben. Is Ben going to come back, for less money and not being able to make decisions? He's not coming back necessarily to play with the mates that he's, sort of had, this past decade and what have you. So for me, and when we look at the Steelers have to move on from Big Ben eventually, and it's starting to feel like that's inevitably coming. And yeah, my gut, I'm with Brian a little bit. My gut leans toward, I don't think Ben's going to be coming back this season. It's hard. It's not that I don't think he doesn't want to. It's that I think there's just going to be this unfortunate breakup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger.
So you say he's not coming back. Do you think he's going to be retired, or do you think he's going to get released?
Well, this is the question. It comes down to whether Ben is happy to go, I want to be retired, or whether he's going to stick his foot in the ground and be stubborn on that front. And in fairness to him, he's probably got that right. He's got that right to be. And therefore it becomes a release. But I think it's a release that's really, we're retiring you, Ben. I can't see him signing for another team. I don't see that.
Well, let's run this gambit though. Let's just say that Roethlisberger gets released. He says, I can still play. And the Steelers say, that's great. You can be like Franco Harris. You can finish your career somewhere else. Where do you think he goes? What team do you think could actually say, wow, we could get Ben Roethlisberger and we could compete right now? If you don't know off the top of your head, I can give one that comes to mind.
Oh, I've got a couple that come to mind.
Go ahead.
I've got a couple that come to mind. My question, though, is he going to pack up his whole family and go do that? And I just don't know. I just don't know whether he's going to do that. And that's the bit for me. If I'm looking at it.
Don't bring logic into it, Matty. Just answer the question.
I like logic, though. Logic's helpful. You know what? I could actually see him. Funnily enough, I could see him at the Carolina Panthers.
Really? See, that's one I would not have guessed. Go ahead, explain yourself.
Okay, so I don't think they're bringing back. If you look at the comments about Teddy Bridgewater, they do not want to bring back Teddy Bridgewater.
Agreed.
Equally, right? Where they're picking in the draft, they might be better off getting a really good O-lineman, for example. And they have there's some decent O-linemen already on that roster. They have McCaffrey who can run the football, right? So that immediately takes some pressure off Big Ben. They've got a couple of wide receivers there as well. Then you bring Ben in on a 1-year deal, right? If it goes horribly wrong, if Ben can't throw the football, you've suddenly got a really high draft pick next year that you can play with. And you can draft in Sam Howell, who's meant to be the best quarterback in next year's draft. To me, that makes sense. Equally, you've got Matt Rule over there. A coach that's like trying to build this dynasty, trying to keep some players interested. The owner over there as well is an part owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, it makes sense. The other one for me was the Chargers, but he's not going to play back up to Justin Herbert, and I don't think he's going to move to the other side of the country. So for me, it is the Carolina Panthers. What about you though, Jeff? You've got a team in mind.
Yeah, I do have a team in mind. It wasn't one that you said. I actually would think about the Chicago Bears. I think the Bears are a team that is, I think that most people, I do. Last year, they're a competitive team if they have a quarterback. But between Nick Foles and Trubisky, they didn't have a quarterback. And you have to look for those teams that think we're just one player. We're one quarterback away. And that would be the team that you would think would try to lure Ben away if he is indeed released, which, by the way, we're not suggesting that's going to happen. We're basically just playing this game and having some fun. Some people had said, I saw online somewhere saying the 49ers. I'm not sure I'm buying that. With Jimmy G still supposed to be back, I don't think they would go that route. I don't know. It would be nuts to see Ben in another uniform. But what would be tougher, watching Ben in another uniform or having to sit through a season of Dwayne Haskins or Mason Rudolph at quarterback?
That's it. And that leads perfectly into the news for me for the week that actually affects the Pittsburgh Steelers. If I look at Kevin Colbert's comments this week, I look at the Colts acquiring Carson Wentz. Your prediction a couple of weeks back, or your request for the Steelers, if Ben wasn't coming back for Trey Lance, that is looking a lot more like a possibility now, because with the Colts getting Wentz, you're seeing another team that needed a quarterback suddenly fill a role there. And therefore, I do actually think in this draft now, they're starting to get a bit of room in terms of when you look at the teams in that first sort of draft order. I can't see the Atlanta Falcons not taking, Zach Wilson if he's not on the board. You're obviously going to, Justin Fields is going to be somewhere in the mix in those top quarterbacks as well. Trevor Lawrence is obviously going first. But I now can see after that trade, and Kevin Colbert's comments, and them not being able to, they're not going to be able to bring Big Ben on a $19 million salary on top of the signing bonus this year. I feel as though we're gearing up to the Steelers looking at an opportunity to trade up.
Let's talk about this, because I love talking about this type of stuff, and I know that either I'm talking to myself on Let's Ride or I'm talking to Dave, who doesn't like to talk about it because he says it's not practical. So there are teams that, like Carolina is a team that you have to watch out for. Detroit is a team that I really am interested in because they just got Goff, but do they think Goff's a long-term answer? And then also, where are these teams ranking Trey Lance amongst all those others that you named? Now I'm reading reports that there are some teams that are planning to put a jumbo package together and trying to trade to get the overall pick from Jacksonville. And so say there's a team that I don't even know the draft order, but let's say they're towards the 8, 9, 10 range.
Yeah, so about Carolina range.
And so if they
Bengals range.
Right. So what if they just sell the farm to go get a 1 overall? What does that mean for Jacksonville when they move back to their spot? In other words, are they now going to be interested in Trey Lance, or are they going to go in a different route? They don't have a quarterback right now. Gardner Minshew is not the guy that anyone thinks or wants as their starting quarterback. This is what's great about the NFL draft. And that's why draft day, I hate it when this stuff happens early. When a trade is made a week before the draft, you're like, boy, that you just got rid of the excitement. The excitement on draft day when you're watching and all this stuff's going on, you're like, oh man, this is insane. I don't know. You look at the prospects, and there's a lot of people that are saying that some, like Kyle Trask, I'm not interested in him. I'm not even interested in the Alabama quarterback. His name escapes me right now.
Mac Jones. No.
Right.
I said to Mark last week, if they draft Mac Jones, I'm complaining about it. So everyone will get bored of that. Everyone will tap out of that. But Mac Jones, no way.
The biggest reason why it's not that I don't think Mac Jones can win games, because you can still have those mobile type quarterbacks win in the NFL. But when you have Matt Canada as your quarterback, he wants a guy that can at least be a threat to run. And that's why Trey Lance would be perfect. Even Fields, I'm not crazy about Ohio State quarterbacks, and that is the same for Dwayne Haskins. I don't know. Some are saying that Dwayne Haskins might be the perfect fit. I'm not sure I'm buying that. I'm not sure I'm buying that just yet. But how do you think this is going to shake? Did you bring up the draft order or anything?
Yeah, I've got the draft order. So we'll go top 12. So we've got obviously Jacksonville, followed by the Jets, which Miami. Atlanta's in at 4. The Bengals are in at 5. The Eagles are in at 6. 7, you've got Detroit Lions, Panthers. 9, Denver Broncos. 10, Dallas Cowboys. 11, New York Giants. 12, San Francisco 49ers. So
a lot of those teams could use a quarterback.
Well, this is the thing. The next domino that I think affects this is like, where does Deshaun Watson play into it? Because this is the thing. Do you trade these massive jumbo packages up to get a Trevor Lawrence, or do you go after that same sort of package and you go in someone that's proven, that's on a decent deal when you think about the salary cap will skyrocket after this year? Bring in Deshaun Watson, and he's a cheap hit this year too for a quality starting quarterback at $16 million for your cap hit. So, I mean, and this is the thing with Trey Lance. When we talk about those top 4, maybe 5, if you want to bundle Trask in there, or you want to bundle in Mac Jones into that room, I sort of sit there and go, Trey Lance looks like the biggest project out of them. He's the one that's got to come along a bit more. So for me, if I'm looking at, and this is the thing, whilst a lot of people might not trust an Ohio State quarterback, I think Justin Fields has done enough that some teams will take that. I don't know. There's a lot to like about it with Trey Lance. And I see them, what have they got to, if the Steelers did trade up from it, right? And we do, let's say we trade the first round pick this year, the first round pick next year, what have you. We could start, it could be a very sort of what happened with Tua last year with Fitzpatrick over at Miami. It could be very much give Mason a couple of games that doesn't work, even give Haskins a game, then bring in Trey Lance. But there's stuff that we can ease him in here. And when I look at these different quarterbacks, even bar Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance to me seems like a really nice fit for Matt Canada.
I agree with you 100%. I think that the ideal situation would be that if Roethlisberger does return, if they find the way to keep him, and if you still jump up and get your Trey Lance, that takes all the pressure off him. He could basically be your quarterback, their QB3. He's learning the system. He's getting acclimated. He's not being thrust into the spotlight or on the field earlier than he needs to be. And then when Ben's done after next season, then it's his show, because Mason Rudolph's going to be gone too. People forget that. His contract expires at the end of the 2021 season. So I think that it's a really good spot for the Steelers to make an aggressive play. And I just have this gut feeling that one of these quarterbacks is going to slip. It's not going to be, it's not going to be Lawrence, and I don't think it's going to be Wilson. It's going to be between Fields and Lance. Someone's going to free fall to the double digits in the draft order. And I think if that happens, that's when the Steelers might say, if we like this guy enough, let's pull the trigger. They did it with Devin Bush. I think they'll do it again if they have to. I don't think they want to give up a first next year, though. I don't think that if I'm the Steelers, I'll give up a second next year and maybe even a third next year, knowing that the comp picks are going to come. But I'm not going to give up a first round pick next year if I can keep it. Now, that's a big if. It's a big if.
Well, and I am being facetious here, but they could always just do a sign and trade with Ben, Carolina Panthers, swap the draft order, and then we can pick in at like 8 there.
In a perfect world, yeah, let's do that.
let's just play that one out. But I do want to bring up like Ryan Pellegrino's comments there from Facebook, which sort of says, "What about Jamie Newman in the mid rounds?" And I want to bring up this question because it brings up the question of what about those guys in those mid rounds? And there's a few guys that are still yet to declare. And I think one of them is Ritter from Cincinnati, who offers a little bit there. But the question for me is, and is sort of like, Jeff, what do you sort of think about those mid round quarterbacks? Because for me, we've got too many needs. I don't want to waste a mid round pick here on a project quarterback. We've got 2 of them, and they're sitting in the quarterback room right now.
Agree with you 100%. Mason Rudolph is the atypical mid round quarterback. So is you look at some of the quarterbacks that have backed up Ben Roethlisberger in his time, whether Ryan St. Pierre, Dennis Dixon. Oh my gosh, who was the one that everyone hated? His mind. I can't believe my mind's gone. I'm 38. I can't remember anything. Who was the quarterback? Landry Jones. There you go. Landry Jones. There you go. These are just mid-round guys. They're just another guy. Everyone wants to say, well, Tom Brady was drafted in the 6th round. Antonio Brown was drafted in the 6th round. Yeah, those don't happen all the time. Those are not normal. That's not the norm. And so you can't bank on that. But what's really interesting, and I wrote this article today, Saturday, and I can't take credit for the data on it. I saw it on Twitter. I was like, this should be an article. And it was that I don't know if you saw this, from 2009 to 2016, every single first round quarterback is with another team or out of the league. That is, like, to me, that's mind blowing, like absolutely mind blowing. Every single quarterback from 2009 until 2016, the first round quarterback is either not employed in the National Football League anymore, or is obviously playing for another team. And that happened when I think Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff were shipped to different teams. That's what kind of pushed it over the edge. It's just incredible. And so when I saw that, like, shoot, drafting a quarterback in the first round is not a guarantee, not at all. And I can't think of the last time, you had a mid-range quarterback actually pan out. There have been situations where that happens. Russell Wilson, as Reginald puts in the live chat, is a good example. But again, I don't feel like that's the norm. I don't know. I guess I feel like if you're going to be aggressive, either if you're not going to be aggressive and go up and get that top tier talent, then you might as well stay where you are, build up the offensive line, and see what you have with Haskins and Rudolph or Roethlisberger or whatever. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And then, I mean, the name being brought up in the live chat, and it's been brought up in the live chat for us on Steelers Touchdown Under for several weeks, is sort of Sam Darnold. What would you do to get Sam Darnold? I sort of was thinking about it this week when I saw some of those pieces come up, and I saw a bit more talk about Sam Darnold and what are the Jets going to do with him. And again, like I don't understand what the value would be for the Pittsburgh Steelers in bringing in Sam Darnold. Like the upgrade in terms of bringing him in and the upgrade on what he is to Mason and Haskins, I don't see why we'd go even trade a second or a third round pick for that. I don't understand why we'd do that. But Jeff, if that was Kevin Colbert's big move and what's probably his last year is to trade in and get, if Ben's not coming back, to trade in and get Darnold, how would you be feeling about that one?
Getting Sam Darnold, is that what you're asking me?
Yeah. If that was Kevin Colbert's big answer to solving no Big Ben in 2021.
I mean, with Darnold, and there's a lot of, I know the Jets said that they're interested in keeping him, but then there's also been talk that they're going to go after Deshaun, in which case he would be expendable. I guess for me, I've watched, and I don't see much of a difference between the two, is what I'm trying to say. Limited mobility by both. Both have have tendency to have the happy feet. Accuracy can be an issue. Where's the upgrade is what I'm saying. Like, some people are like, oh, Sam Darnold because he was a higher draft pick, because he has a pedigree. Okay, I'll give you that. Other than that, is it really worth the trade? I don't think so. I've seen enough. This is actually a line from the movie A League of Their Own, which is one of my favorites. There he says, I've seen enough to know I've seen too much. And that's what I feel with Sam Darnold. Like, I've seen enough of him to know that I'm okay. We have that on our team in Mason Rudolph. I don't need that again. But would you be okay with that trade?
No, I think it'd be a massive waste of a pick and it's funny, like, and I'm going to use an argument that I against myself. I often was sitting there last year and I was like, you know what? I wouldn't really mind if we cut a few million off and didn't have Bud and you bring in Javon Clowney, right? Now, that's a conversation for a different time. But a lot of people are sort of sitting there and going, well, bring in Darnold. But Rudolph knows the system and he's not that, and Darnold wouldn't be that much of an upgrade. What I saw from Rudolph in week 17, I would be more open to seeing that than bringing in Darnold, who, as you said, with the happy feet. Equally, right now, do we have a better O-line than what's sitting there on the Jets? Maybe, but not by much. We've got a bunch of questions. It's what I said when Mark and I were talking about Deshaun Watson about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Why would Deshaun Watson want to come to the Pittsburgh Steelers right now? There are questions in the O-line. And I think that's why if Ben doesn't come back, if the solution is to do it through the draft or use a draft pick, whether it's from a trade to find that next quarterback, it's got to be a top tier quarterback or go with what you've got in 2020.
The thing about quarterbacks, and Snowman, who gives us $5, thank you very much, Snow. He says you can't trust USC quarterbacks; they stink. Matt Leinart might disagree, even though he stunk in the NFL too. I think that the thing about it, here's what people forget is that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you have a top tier quarterback, you're not letting them get away no matter what. That's why everyone's bringing up Dak Prescott. If Cowboys literally feel like he is the guy, why would you ever let him leave? Why would you ever even entertain the thought of letting him walk or not signing him to a long-term deal? And so when everyone says, well, we'll just get a free agent quarterback, if they're available, they're not the answer, in my opinion. You have to find the guy. And if you want to avoid the Bubby Brister, Neil O'Donnell, Cordell Stewart, Tommy Maddox eras of the Steelers, You need to make sure you draft a guy. And that's why I said I'm okay if they're aggressive in the draft. I'm okay if this offseason, take him over an offensive lineman, whatever. Okay, if you get that guy, I'm more comfortable with them getting a veteran free agent offensive lineman than I am a veteran quarterback. Everyone says, Ryan Fitzpatrick, is he winning you a Super Bowl? I don't think so. Not me personally, but that's just my take. I say that in the NFL, when the quarterback position is the most important position, you're not going to get a guy on the free agent market that's worth anything.
Yeah, and that's it. And the thing that I'm really interested to see as well, when you talk about those first round quarterbacks that are picked that are no longer with those teams anymore as well, I'd love to know, if I could be a fly on the wall, how good is Jordan Love sitting there in the Green Bay Packer room, that they drafted there, like we saw a bit out of Hurts, like on the Eagles side of things, is that there are some of these quarterbacks that sit there, and then we don't really ever get to see them flourish there. Would Green Bay be open with all their salary cap options? Would they be open to trading a second or third for Love and maybe a higher pick in the following year? I would rather take that trade than a Darnold trade, for example.
I agree because the thing is, no one knows. There was no preseason this year, so it's not like we saw Jordan Love. Only they know what they have in him. I also think the flip side of that is how many quarterbacks were ruined because they were put on the field too early. Exactly. I think of someone like this guy is not a top tier quarterback. I actually liked Deshaun Kaiser coming out of college. I thought he was a pretty good quarterback. He was mobile, but boy, was he ruined. I felt he was ruined because he went to Cleveland, and it's Cleveland. But he's just an example that comes to mind of a quarterback. You're like, I feel like he still had some upside, but he's a career backup at this point. So it's one of those. And everyone brings up Haskins. Is Haskins the guy? I don't know. I mean, Washington was a horrible team, and he didn't want to be there, and they didn't want him there. And so, in that regard, how much did he put into it, and how much did he actually not put into it? And do you want that kind of player in your organization? The Steelers have no risk in this move, but there are some people that say, maybe Haskins could be the guy that is perfect for Matt Canada's system. And if he is, what a steal would that be? I mean, think about that. Everyone talks about the worst case scenario, which isn't even that bad, which is the Steelers just saying, all right, bud, thanks for playing. We'll see you next time. But if it were the best case scenario, he gets on the field, runs Matt Canada's system to a T. It's more like a college system, which he's comfortable and was good at it. Ohio State. What would that be?
Well, there. And I mean, for me with Haskins, if Ben's not coming back and you're going and you're liking what you're seeing from Haskins there, I mean, and this is the hard thing in terms of when they can do the workouts and stuff. But for Haskins to be successful, I do think we need to take a high round running back. I've said countless times, you don't spend a first round pick on a running back, but we need to give Haskins and Rudolph, in fairness as well, we need to give them a second round running back. If Ben's not coming back, we need to take that pressure off. We need to give them someone that can make a play, when they're facing a lot of pressure there. So again, that's the question. We don't know. We're not necessarily sitting there. But as you say, it's like with Haskins is where are those players that whether they're in the right fit or not. I mean, Shannon White from the website as well. He and I have talked sort of offline around Jacob Eason, who was a 4th round pick for the Colts, who's very, very raw, but got an absolute cannon of an arm. Like, could you trade a 5th for him and do that? Like, and I know we've just talked about not having projects, but there are so many ways to look at this quarterback position. But as I said, there's no point using a first round pick at pick number 24 if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers on a quarterback like Mac Jones or Kyle Trask for me.
Nah, not a chance. Not a chance.
But with Pouncey's retirement, Jeff, I was listening to some of your shows this week, and you sort of mentioned that how much higher center had gone into that order of sort of needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming out of the draft. Equally, is there a position that you sort of thought going into this offseason they had to fill that's really come right out of that mix for you now? That's just not a priority, or there are things that are just now a much bigger priority going into the draft for you?
Well, let's do the before and after. So let's assume that Marquise Pouncey was going to return. So center's not on my draft board, not high at least. You have your right guard in DeCastro. You've got a core four coming back. You've got Dotson. You have one spot to fill. Now all of a sudden, you got to fill the center, which it's not like there's a Zach Banner or a Gerald Hawkins that you could sign for the cheap. J.C. Hassenauer is a restricted free agent, but he's not the answer. Not at all. I mean, just go check out Jeffrey Benedict's article about who's the real enemy, I guess, for the Steelers slip down the stretch, and J.C. Hassenauer was talked about a lot. So for me, I think that now center skyrockets up to almost the top. It was at the top of my latest team needs list that I did, and that bumped quarterback all the way off my list, because when you look at it, you're like, man, I think they need to triple dip at center. They need to re-sign Hassenauer just as a security blanket. He can play guard too. They need to draft someone, and they also need to look for a veteran. Maybe it's BJ Finney if he gets released. There's a couple other people that are out there floating around. But it's, again, who are you going to bring in with very minimal salary cap space? But Pouncey retiring changes so much for the Steelers. And it's beyond Ben Roethlisberger's relationship with him. It goes beyond everything in terms of the team needs and how they're going to approach the draft. What about you? How does that alter things for you?
Yeah, for me, and I've got to stick to what I've said so far, and that, like, I think you can get a good center in the second round. And again, it was up there for me because, I mean, quite frankly, when I saw that wildcard game, it wasn't necessarily a one-off for me from what we've seen from Pounce over the last couple of years. That some of that play has started to drop off. And even if it was coming back, we need someone there that we can go to going forward. And there are a couple of really great centers to go after in this draft. The piece for me that skyrocketed up a little bit is wide receiver. I've very much come to the conclusion that we will be losing Juju, as much as I don't particularly like that result there. The one that's dropped down, though, a bit for me, and it's happened a little bit because of these priorities that have come up for the Pittsburgh Steelers, equally having a look at the contract that you can play with Ebron, where previously it'd be a cut. I think they can do some stuff to extend him out, is tight end. I actually thought they needed to spend quite a decent round pick on a tight end this year. This would be the draft to do it. There's some great tight ends. That's fallen way down the list for me, even with Vance McDonald retiring. So I'm interested to see what they do in that position, because they need to give, particularly if Ben's not coming back, they need to give some weapons in that tight end room and really stretch that field. And I'm interested to see how Canada's going to work a tight end in as well.
I think when you look at that, see, that's the thing here with team needs. And a lot of people get this mixed up. We're not talking about draft needs. We're talking about team needs. And what is the most important aspect for the Steelers? Not where they need to target in the draft. Because this, in my opinion, this draft of centers, this class, it's awful. And there's just not a standout guy that you're going to say, take him in the first round, he's going to start for you day one. There's some guys you might get on day two or mid-rounds, second, third, fourth, that are going to be quality players. They're going to be a good stopgap there. I just don't see that Marquise Pouncey, so to speak, in this upcoming draft class. And so even though I had center at the top, doesn't mean I think they need to take a center in the first round. Like I want to make that very clear for both people listening, that there's a big difference between a team need and a draft need and what you expect to happen in the draft. But the Steelers world's going to get rocked more than just this. Just be prepared. You said that the title of this is this the calm before the storm? This is the calm before the storm, but the storm's not going to hit. I'm telling you right now, storm's not going to hit until March. So we have a couple weeks to get our stuff together, to prepare ourselves, because in the month of March is when all the stuff's going to happen. That's when we're going to probably hear about the salary cap, Ben's money's due, the new league year starting, free agency, the tampering period on the 15th. It's going to be wild and crazy.
That's it. Now, with that wraps up part one of this week's Steelers Touchdown Under. If you're listening live right now on YouTube or Facebook, stay with us and we'll be right back in just a second. If you're on the audio side, flick over to part two, where we're going to continue. We're going to take a bit of audience Q&A. We're going to do our usual segment, Slinging the Slang, a bit of an extended version for Jeff. This is going to be full of laughs. We're going to see how it goes there. And then, just continue talking about this calm before the storm that is this offseason. And we're back on Steelers Touch Down Under. I'm Matt Peverell, and I'm joined by a special guest co-host in Mark's absence this week, Jeff Hartman. Happy birthday, Jeff.
Thank you.
Welcome to part 2. We've just talked everything Pittsburgh Steelers in terms of, the week that was and some of the questions that were raised. Anything else that you sort of feel that that needed sort of covering off this week that you didn't get to say your piece on?
Nah, I got to tell you though, this is totally off topic, but when you said touchdown under, and I listen to our podcast all the time in our house. So I have 5 children and they're always around. I mean, they never, you have 5 kids, you're always around the kid. And so I'll have it in the kitchen and I'm cleaning up dishes or I'm making a meal. And they now say the word under, like you do the introduction to the show. So like we were in the car the other day and a Carrie Underwood song was on and they go, is that Carrie Underwood? And I said, I don't know if she says it like that, but that is Carrie Underwood. Yes, you are right.
Well, so that's interesting, right, Jeff? Because Mark almost got fired over this. Jokingly fired over this. He almost was a former podcaster for the result of it. But he had a bit of a criticism about where you sort of ranked on this Australian accent. And we've given you a fair bit of stick around, the whole Jennifer Lopez thing.
Which was not my shtick. That came from the Jimmy Fallon show. Like that I took it from someone else. That wasn't my shtick, but go ahead.
But what I was going to say is that so very different in Australia to the US is that we find one of the differences that I've picked off after, working with heaps of Americans, working for an American company and a couple of former jobs and, going over there 5 times is that the letter R is really accentuated when in terms of the way you guys, a lot of pronounce. It doesn't matter whether it's East Coast or West Coast. It's just something you notice as an Aussie. Just equally, we speak really quickly. Often when you're over there, people are like, hey, what? Can you say that again? But one of the things, the tricks for the Aussie accent is just turning those ERs and turning those Rs into A's or an AH sound, like an R, again, even when I say it, though, it sounds like a letter R. You got to just sort of say the word. But, that's one of the little tips I'm going to give you in terms of going a bit more Aussie style is turn those ERs into more of an AH sound.
How in the heck is it that whether people are English, Australian, they can do an American accent like that? Like it is nothing. And yet Americans trying to do other accents, oh my gosh, it's awful. It's tough to listen to. Listening to Brian Anthony Davis try to do any impersonation is painful. It is painful. And when you all said he had the best accent, I was like, you are done. You're done. You can take your podcast mic and go.
I reckon, to be fair, I reckon that Dave's probably the best. Dave's at the current top of the board. I got to say, Dave's current top of the board. But with that, we thought we'd try with this extended version of Sling and the Slang this week.
Sure.
So as we always say, it's just as Ben or whoever's going to be the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers likes to sling the rock, we like to sling the slang. So what I'm going to do, Jeff, is I've got a couple of words. So I've put together a few. And some of them are phrases. And I mean, you can have a go at guessing them. Now, some of them are not that hard to really pronounce. So in terms of if you want to give them a go with the Aussie accent, you can. If you choose not to, that's fine. But you're still going to learn a bit of sling and the slang. So the first phrase for this week's list is suss it out. Suss it out. What do you think suss it out might mean?
Suss it out? To me, when I hear that as, I guess, an athlete, I think of it's kind of like suck it up. But I don't know if that's
that's pretty close. So suss it out is the sus is an abbreviation for suspicious, right? So suss it out is just sort of figuring things out. It's very topical for what we're talking about today with the Pittsburgh Steelers offseason. They've got to suss out who they can fill these team needs with. They've got to suss out what the salary cap is. They've got to suss out what the trade market looks like when it comes to the draft. So I thought that was a fitting one for where we're currently sitting.
That's a good one. Suss it out. All right. I like it.
So there's one I use a bit. The next one is go Troppo.
What? Say that again.
Go Troppo.
Troppo. Is that Troppo. Tropical? Go tropical?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
All right. Yes.
But it doesn't actually necessarily mean literally what it says. So do you want to have a guess at what go tropical means or go tropo means?
So go tropo does not mean like I'm going to the beach. It means something totally different.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is it?
So go tropo is like, so tropical climates, really hot, really like sweaty, can send people crazy looking for those mirages. So go tropo is basically gone nuts, like absolutely gone wild.
Okay. I like that. That's
so
good.
There you go. The next one, what's a sook or a sookie lala?
This is worse than Dave's trivia, where I look like an idiot all the time anyways for the preview.
Yeah, but you weasel your way out of that with like the Dick Shiners and the Buzz Nutters. So.
No, I never say Buzz Nutter. I always say Dick Shiner. Since I can't use Dick Shiner, what is it again? Say it one more time.
Sook. And then to kids, you'll often say, oh, you're being a sookie lala.
Is it just like a baby? I don't know.
It's just like a whinger and a whiner. Like someone's just like, like the way you saw Tyrann Mathieu with that pick, right? Like, and he didn't get it in that Super Bowl and he's just going on about it. It's like, stop being a silk, get over it kind of thing. But yeah, when you're a kid, often your parents just say when you're like throwing a tantrum, they'll be like, don't be a sookie lala.
That's good. All right. That's good.
And this one Brian got asked and he got it straight out, right? What does the word pash mean?
Pash? He got it right?
He got it right.
First time, no hints, nothing.
Nothing.
That's a pressure.
Well, it was pretty close.
Can you use it in a sentence? Is this like the spelling bee where I can, what's the origin of the word?
It'll give it away. It'll give it away.
Okay, so what did you say? Say that
Pash.
again.
Pash.
Is it a noun?
No, it's a verb.
Oh, okay, I have no clue. I was going to say what Ken said. Passionate. They get short for passionate.
Well, Ken's pretty close. It's a passionate kiss.
Okay.
And so pash rash is when you get like the face is all red after a girl's been kissing a guy with a beard.
That's good. I like that.
What about sweet as? Sweet as.
Sweet. Is that all one word?
No. So sweet and as.
I feel like common sense tells me that it's, I don't know, a comment on a girl's derriere.
No, it's sweet as. It's actually, I've used as an example is in Australia, we often put as at the end of things when you're just talking kind of thing. If it's like just accentuate it. So it might be sweet as, or that wide receiver is fast as. It's just literally, we just stick an as on the end of it. Just
okay.
Something that we just do. We're not in written English, but definitely in spoken English.
There you go.
All right. The last one, and then we'll get back to talking Pittsburgh Steelers. Not within Kui.
Say that one more time.
So not within Kui. So not within Kui.
No clue.
So see, this is why the Schofields are up there, because they'd give this a good red hot go. But that's all right. That's all right. So Kui, often there's that like if people have seen it in different, I'm sure it's in one of the Dundee movies as well, where Australian, like you shout in the outback like Kui, and then like it will like echo for ages, right? So to say not within Kui is just like what, like massive distance, like so far away, basically, kind of thing. So right now the Steelers are not within Kui of the salary cap.
Or the Super Bowl.
Or the Super Bowl.
I think I got that one right. Okay.
or a starting O-line or a decent running back. But,
there you go. Very good.
There you go.
Is it just me, or do you all have so many of these slang terms? Like I was trying to think of a slang that we use in the United States that is even comparable. And I can't think of anything. Like we have words, like I know on our Slack channel, I said, oh, like a holler. and you're like, you had no idea what that was.
No.
And that's a distance between two peaks that typically has a stream or water source at the bottom. And people like, I grew up in West Virginia. I grew up in a holler. The holler surrounding the Big Wheeling Creek. And so the Big Wheeling Creek goes in the Ohio River. Everyone knows the Ohio River because that starts in Pittsburgh. It's one of the three rivers. And then that leads down to the Mississippi. But still, I just can't think of, all this stuff. Like it's crazy. I love listening to the terms because it's so fascinating, but I just can't think of anything that we have like that in the United States. It's crazy.
Well, it's funny because Mark and I have, and there's also ones that you sort of say, but they can be taken way out of context. So we've got to keep things like PG as well in terms of, because they can mean different things, right? And it's funny. We've sort of got to a couple of weeks ago. Mark just said to me when we're doing our pre-planning for the show, and he just said to me, Matt, I have no idea what we're going to come up with today because we've been through a lot of them. But then you always seem to find them. Like I wanted to find a couple of ones for you, and like literally, I will say, suss it out and sweet as and sook occasionally. I don't think I probably have never actually said go Troppo, to be fair. But not within Kui is one that I would actually say. So
now, do you say legend a lot? Because I found that I follow some people, Australians on Instagram and stuff, and they're always like, oh, you're just a legend. Like you're a legend. Like did you use that term as well?
Yeah. And bloody legend too, when they're like a good, like they're one of the better legends. They're like a bloody legend. Yeah.
There's the English coming down into Australia.
And even like we've got it shortened too. So you just say, oh, what a ledge. Like so if someone does your favorite word, you're like, what a ledge kind of thing.
There you go.
There you go. Anyway, let's get back to talking Pittsburgh Steelers because that's way off. That's way off.
Oh, here's some though. Hold on. Mule Skinner's giving me some. Have you ever heard Red Up the House? You know what that is?
Oh, like drink a house dry?
No, that's clean up.
Oh, yeah.
Basically,
red up. Say red with mess.
Red up is basically, in other words, for like ready the house. So in other words, if you have company coming over, we need to red up. So let's ready up the house. Let's ready the house for when company comes over. What do you guys call? What do you call it if you go to the grocery store? What do you call the thing you push?
A trolley.
A trolley? See, we call it. It's either a cart or a buggy. And in Wheeling, where I grew up, it was a buggy. Go grab that buggy. And now over here in Maryland, it's a shopping cart. Like you don't call it a buggy. If you call it a buggy, they look at you funny. So you call it a trolley. That's awesome. Okay.
So I went to Vegas the first time when I was about 10, 11 years old. And we're sitting there waiting. We're sitting outside of this shopping center or mall, as you call them. And this lady came up to me and she was like, what time's the trolley coming? And like, I'm 11 years old and I'm like pardon? Like, she's like, what time's the trolley coming? Like, is this the trolley stop? And I've got this image in my head of this woman like riding this like train of trolleys. And like, I'm looking at her really weird. Anyway, she's like, she storms off in a huff. And I remember my mom saying to me like, why'd you give her such a rude reaction? I'm like, because Mom, like, I don't know why this woman's going to catch a trolley home. And she's like, no, over here, like a trolley is like a bus. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's good. All right, that's enough. We'll get back to the football talk.
Let's get back to the football. So look, before we get into some Q&A, Mark's not here. Jeff. I know that there are, I sort of said to you that there are, and we've not got to do one of these live shows before together. And, I'm quite a vocal person in the BTSC Slack channel, along with the rest of us. Is there a burning Steelers question that you might have for me?
I'll give you one that I put on Twitter yesterday. And it was a Twitter poll. It had almost I think over 1,500 votes and a lot of people, great discussion. It was in the Friday night six pack. If you had to pick just one of these two guys, and let's say that you can only keep one, but they're both free agents, are you taking Mike Hilton or Cam Sutton?
Okay, so this is an interesting one. So for me, because I would have said Hilton all the way up to probably the last few weeks of the season.
Okay.
But I'm more in the Sutton camp now. And for
what changed?
Yeah, so after Hilton came back from that injury, he started to work his way back in and what have you. But what I was starting to see from Sutton is actually some real development. Now, before the season, I was like, he's just a waste of salary cap. But what I saw throughout this season from Sutton, the versatility in this offseason where there are a lot of questions, and, you know, when we keep talking about them across the content on BTSC is some of those questions, but the coverage ability versus what Mike Hilton can do equally. And as I know Dave's done a lot of talking about this, is that there's not a lot of teams that can integrate Mike Hilton into the defense the way we can. So for me, the upside is let him test the open market, right? Let him, even if we lose him for a year, Hilton's the sort of guy that we could easily bring back. But when I look at them both as well, to me, I think Sutton offers the Steelers more. And in a season where you might have to extend Hayden, that's what some of the thinking is with his $8 million cap hit this year. I don't necessarily think so. I don't like the idea of paying a 32-year-old cornerback that much money. I just think that Sutton offers the Steelers a bit more in a season forward, in an off-season forward questions, and in some where there's so much flux at the position.
Someone brought up a really interesting take on this, and I figured, okay, I'll lay this out. They said, what if you let Mike Hilton walk because he's going to be more expensive?
Yep.
You extend Hayden to get his cap number down. You re-sign Sutton. When Hayden gets to the point where he can't really play on the outside, Sutton takes over there, and you move Hayden to the slot because Hayden is a good tackler. He can blitz. He's physical. He can play the line of scrimmage. I feel like I was like, whoa, that my mind was kind of blown by that. I was definitely like, I never thought of it that way. But you could get some Deshaun Townsend years out of Joe Hayden by moving him to the slot, having him play nickel, having him play dime. Heck, maybe even moving him to safety at times. He could do that. He's smart enough, been doing that for a long time. I think that's a good option.
Yeah, and I also say, like, what if there's – I mean, this is the thing. Everyone's so focused on O-lineman and quarterback and a couple of good running backs this draft. There are some really good players in the secondary, particularly at the cornerback position, and there's guys that I would have sort of said that are usually top 15 that I feel will be drafted in the back 15 in that first round. And – I mean, I'm not going to be silly enough as to suggest the Pittsburgh Steelers should draft a cornerback with the first pick because we all know how that's going to work out. No. But there are players in second and third round where, even though that necessarily isn't the highest need on first appearances, I'm a big believer, and it's what you said at the end to close out part one, is that we're talking about team needs. And I'm a big believer in you draft best player available. There are going to be some players in that secondary that are there. So when I look at what money you're going to commit to Hilton or Sutton, and as you say, the money that needs to be committed to Sutton is a lot less than what needs to be committed to Mike Hilton. That's where that's where I'm sort of like, we'll keep Sutton, find that role that Hilton does somewhere else. You know, can you move Edmonds around? There are a lot of different things that we can do there. So for me, yeah, it's definitely leave Hilton equally. And I did sort of say this. Hilton got absolutely burned against Jarvis Landry in that wild card round. And I know there are a few other things that happened on that particular play, but I just watched him get absolutely burned. And I don't know, it just stuck in my mind. It's like, I'm not going to give Filer for his performance that game either. So, you know, that's sort of,
I mean, if you can keep them both, if you could find a way to keep Hilton and Sutton, the defense is still going to be elite. Not that they're going to be elite if they lose one or even both, but at the same time, if you can keep both of those guys and solidify your secondary, I would definitely use Hilton more sparingly, and I wouldn't pay him top dollar for a typical slot cornerback. I think the Steelers have a number in mind. It's whether he wants to stay or not. So we'll see.
But I ask you, Jeff, right back at you, right? If you get $8 million, right, and you can bring Sutton in for, let's say, $2 million this year, right, and you can get Hilton for $6 million, would you cut Hayden and use the $8 million that you're saving on Hayden's contract this year to keep Hilton and Sutton instead?
I wouldn't be against it. I really wouldn't. But there's so many other factors here. Joe Hayden is a good leader on the team. I feel like the Steelers' leadership is really lacking right now. And with Pouncey gone and Ben may be gone, I feel like there's a lot of things going on where, I would be okay with it. I would love to see them keep Hayden because I think he and Nelson are really good tandem. I would love to know if Hayden would be even interested in the scenario I brought up earlier, which basically is would you be willing to slide into the slot at times? Would you be willing to play dime? Would you be, not that he would ever leave the field, but playing different roles? He might not want to do that. He might say, look, I'm still an elite starting outside cornerback. I'm not moving. I don't know. But if that's what it meant to keep them both, and I thought that was better for the long-term issues for the team, I would do it in a heartbeat. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's what I think with Sutton as well. Like he's a bit of a younger guy. I don't know. I think he can offer the Steelers stuff for 3 or 4 seasons ahead, not 1 to 2 seasons ahead necessarily. But look, it's also, as I said, we'd love to get into some audience Q&A before we wrap up the show. There's always a lot of questions from the listeners here and those listening live on YouTube and Facebook to Steelers Touchdown Under. So throw them at us. Throw them at us, absolutely. I just want to go back as well. I saw a couple of there. I'm going to bring up one that I had before. Where was it?
Well, there's one about...
We'll go with AJ, yeah.
Yep.
What's William Jackson III's market value and skill?
How crazy would it be if he came to Pittsburgh, considering he was the guy they wanted right before they took Artie Burns? I think that he's a good cornerback. I know that he had his issues, but so did the entire Bengals defense this year. I think if you put him into a system like Pittsburgh's, I think he could be very valuable. If you were to cut Hayden and somehow get him, you wouldn't miss much. I'll put it that way. I don't think so personally, but he's got to stay healthy. He's been banged up throughout his career. That's a big issue with him.
And for me, when it comes to market value as well, I know it's an easy cop out to say we don't know what the cap number is, but that is going to affect so much of this, and he's worth more than a Sutton, and I think you can probably get Sutton on the best part of a $3 million deal for this season. Is he worth more than $5 or $6 million? Probably not. Do we have the cap? Do you have to cut Hayden? Like that's the question there. I think a lot of teams are looking to get younger at the cornerback position, and they're looking a lot at speed as well. So that will sort of, again, that sort of determines a little bit of that market. But hey, if we could bring him in, yeah, I'd love to see him with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay. You got the next one you omitted it. There you go.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Snowman's question. So Snowman's a big favorite for, or definitely always present in a lot of the BTSC shows and definitely here on Steelers Touchdown Under. So he kind of says from the YouTube side of things, will the Steelers sign Matt Filer? I personally, particularly if Villanueva is retiring or chooses to go somewhere else, I do think the Pittsburgh Steelers will look to keep Matt Filer. Is it the right move from my side of things? If he's going to play guard, no, it isn't. If you're going to look at him at a tackle or his O-line depth, yes, it is. Jeff?
I don't think so. I think he's just going to make too much money on the open market. Guy that can play tackle and guard who has started in the National Football League at both positions. And I got to be honest, especially at tackle, he was a very high-rated player. I think that he's going to have way too much offered to him, and the Steelers are not going to match it. I think they'd love to have him back. But then again, where does he fit? Unless he's going to go back to tackle, where does he fit? He's not going to – if anything was proven, and we all screamed at the mountaintops when they did this, Dotson needs to start, period. And so unless DeCastro steps away, which I don't think he will, so unless that happens, there's no room for Filer. That's just the way it looks.
And they might even, as I said, those decisions as well. Like it's a lot cheaper to bring in a Banner and keep Chooks there, and you've got Dotson and DeCastro. You fill that need at center through the draft or a cheap veteran. It works. Bring up Chad's question. I've previously said no to this one. I don't think it offers any more help than what we've got there with Ebron. But Jeff, would you take Zach Ertz if he's released or through a trade?
The tight end position is just depressing for the Steelers. It depends on the price. That's the big thing, and I feel like he'll probably get top dollar somewhere, at least in the tight end market. And I don't think the Steelers are interested, or do they want to bring him in. I do like him better than Ebron in terms of as a pass catcher, because I think Ebron just drops a lot of passes. But other than that, I'm going to pass. I'll take a pass on that.
I reckon he's going to Jacksonville. As a weapon for Trevor Lawrence. They've got cap. It probably would make a bit of sense. Finish your career down there in Florida. Yeah, that's what makes sense.
Then the Steelers can take Tyler Eifert. If he could stay healthy, I've always liked Tyler Eifert. That guy, if he is healthy, he is good. I'm still saying that. Just saying. Go ahead.
Will they cut Vince and save cap if they can get Jared Davis? For me, they have to cut Vince. I mean, he's such a, and Jeff talks about leadership. I think he'd be sorely missed as one of those leaders and passionate guys in that locker room. But that's $4 million that we just don't have luxury on what he offers to that defense, where you can find that elsewhere. But Jeff, could you see this scenario coming where they do that, Jared Davis?
now because I still think that Vince Williams is valuable if he has an athletic player alongside him. He was great when Ryan Shazier was there. He was great when Devin Bush was there before he got hurt this year. He needs someone athletic next to him so that he can do his thing, stop the run, rush the quarterback, and let everyone else do the athletic stuff. Now, if Devin Bush gets hurt again, well, you know what you're going to get. But at the same time, if Bush comes back, he's healthy and stays healthy, there's still a lot of value, in my opinion, in Vince Williams.
Yep. And then Mark Tobin says, I'd go for the tight end from Green Bay. I'm not sure he's referring to there, but if it's Jay Sternberger, yeah, I would love to see him in a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. I like that. That would be probably for me, the most confident I'd have been in the tight end position since Heath. For me, I just feel like Jace has got so much to offer there, assuming that's who he's referring to there. But yeah, look, I think this is it. It doesn't matter where you look for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's just at every position right now, it feels like there's a question mark, due to cap, due to age, due to what we need, due to the change in coaching schematics. And that's why, as I said at the start of the show, it's definitely one where it's the calm before the storm. And as you said earlier too, Jeff, that storm, it's a little bit further away, but you will see the Steelers start to batten down the hatches. So if you can make one prediction in terms of those, which domino do you think will be the first to fall, just to wrap it up?
In terms of what's going to happen with the Steelers?
Yeah.
I think the next big event will be another retirement. Whether that's Ben Roethlisberger, whether it's someone like Alejandro Villanueva, who might shock people. I hope it's not David DeCastro, but could it be David DeCastro that says, look, I'm done. Like I'm just, all my boys are gone. My buddies are all gone. Gilbert's gone. He's been gone for years. Villanueva is going to be gone. Ramon Foster's gone. Filer's gone. Pouncey's now gone. I'm all by myself. I think that's the next big thing is you might see a retirement. And then after that, the Steelers are going to have to make some tough decisions on their free agents and the players like we talked about, Hayden, Williams, big cap numbers. What are they going to do with those guys? We'll see. But that's my pick.
Yeah, fair enough. And I can't disagree with you on that one either, because I think, there are so many questions. I wonder though if we'll hear something from Ben. But again, I feel like that domino relies on the salary cap, and we're not going to know that for a couple of weeks. But look, that wraps up Steelers Touchdown Under for this week. Big thank you to our live special guest, Jeff Hartman, co-editor of the site. If you're not engaging on his Twitter polls or you're not reading the articles on the website, I implore you to do so. We'll be back next week. I'll be back on Wednesday with Cap Room as well. Have a great weekend from over here in the future, where I'm phoning back to the past to Jeff Hartman. Have a great Saturday evening. Go Steelers.
See ya.